Hi everybody, Happy New Year and welcome to day 4 of my daily video uploads to ring in the new year. Today what I'm going to be doing is doing a anticipated releases for 2022 as well as a sort of vague TBR. Fun fact, I filmed this video already and the first run through my mum walked in halfway through. My parents and my family don't actually know that I do booktube, so I have never seen myself shut off a camera as quickly as I did about an hour ago when I heard the door close and I realised she'd come home for her lunch from work. Scared the shit out of me as well. She didn't realise I was in, so she didn't even say hello, so I was like, who's in that house? And then I came back and I filmed the second half of it and I realised that neither portions had filmed because my camera had run out of space on my memory card and it didn't tell me because I forgot that I had a bunch of leftover footage from one of my film projects for university that I still hadn't deleted because I don't use any of that much now. So we're filming this again! So without any further ado, I'm going to get into the new releases that I'm anticipating and the vague TBR. I say vague TBR because I am one hell of a mood reader and I don't own copies of all these books as well, so it may be a case of like, you know, I want to read them, I just never quite get round to acquiring a copy. And I don't like putting that pressure on myself, you know, I like to just read what I feel like reading and stuff, and I have a huge stack of books to be reading as is. So without any further ado, these are the books I want to read in the next year. So starting with new releases, The Genesis Wars by Kemi Dawn Bowman is coming out. This is the sequel to The Infinity Courts, which is one of my favourite books of this year, and I absolutely love it. It ended on such an interesting cliffhanger with such a huge twist, and I'm just so excited to see how that gets resolved, how that gets developed, where our characters are going to go, and what happens to everybody. Another book I'm excited for is Blood Marked by Tracy Dion. This is the sequel to Legendborn, another book that came out in 2020 that I've just been obsessed with ever since, and I'm so excited to see how that story continues and where Bree and Nick and Cel and everyone just kind of end up. I can't wait for it. Another one that I'm really curious about is Blood Scion. I don't know how to pronounce that word. I don't know how to pronounce it. What a cover! Like, I think a lot of people have this on their radar purely from that absolute fire cover, or striking as Dawn would call it. It just looks so good and I'm so excited for it, and it sounds amazing as well. It comes out really soon as well, which is great, so we'll see if it lives up to its absolute fire cover. Also a book called One for All coming out, which seems to be a retelling of The Three Musketeers. The only sort of experience I have with the Musketeers is the BBC TV series that came out a few years ago. I mean, I absolutely love that series, particularly the first two series, especially series 2, because holy shit is the antagonist in that fantastic. And yeah, I'm really curious as to kind of read more sort of Musketeer-esque stuff. You know, who knows, I might even read the original book one day. But this looks like a really interesting retelling and I'm very curious to see what it's going to be like. The Gifts That Bind Us by Caroline O'Donoghue will be coming out. This is the sequel to All Our Hidden Gifts, which I read earlier in 2021. A book that I absolutely loved and I didn't expect to love as much as I did. It was really good fun, and again ends in such an interesting way with the characters having gone through a hell of a lot. And, you know, our main character is also a very unlikable character. She's very selfish and things. And I'm loving the journey she's going on to become a better person and to improve the person that she is. You know, I just can't wait to see her develop more. Electra is one as well that I'm a bit curious about. It's by Jennifer Sage, who also wrote Ariadne, which I actually didn't like too much. I do have a spoiler-free discussion where you can perhaps hear more in-depth thoughts. But it's got this gorgeous cover by one of my favourite cover designers, Michaela Alcaino, and I think I'll just give this author another chance. You know, because if you saw my most surprising books video, I read 2 books by Zencho last year. The first one being right at the beginning of the year and I gave that 2 stars. I didn't like it. But then towards the end of the year I read The Order of the Pure Moon Reflected in Water, which I think I gave like 4, because I actually ended up really enjoying that novella. So I do like to give authors another chance because it has been proven that, you know, I do still find books by them that I like. So I am going to give Jennifer Saint another chance with Electra just to see what happens there and if I enjoy it. Another book that I'm curious about is Spirit. This is also like a sort of cover by almost entirely because it's designed by Ravina Kai, who's one of my favourite illustrators, and I've been following her work since she worked on And the Ocean Was Our Sky by Patrick Ness. So, you know, there's a lot of books that I find, you know, Alatsue was one of them. She did the cover design for that as well. So that's kind of where I find about this one. I think it's a King Arthur sort of retelling. Sounds really incredible. You know, so the blurb kind of matches the interest the cover garnered in me, so I'm curious to see what that's going to be about. Last but not least of ones that are coming out next year, Daughter of the Moon Goddess is a retelling of the myth of Chang'e, and I've seen Over the Moon, which is the Netflix movie sort of about that kind of myth, so that's kind of my only experience really with that folklore tale. But I'm very excited just to see what happens in this story and how this author interprets it and things, and what I can perhaps learn about the myth and stuff. Very, very curious. The cover looks gorgeous as well. I can't wait. Moving on to just books that I just kind of want to read. A lot of these are out already. Starting with Girl, Woman, Other. This is one that's not usually on my radar to read, however I am wanting to take part in the Penguin Random House book cover design contest, which one of these is one of the options. And you know, it sounds really like an interesting, very interesting book that I do want to try reading, and I was going to read it really, really soon, but I've got to take my copy of it up with me to my mum's, so it'll be a couple of weeks before I can get started on that one. But yeah, I definitely want to read that sooner rather than later, because the submissions for the contest are closing, I think, at the beginning of March. As of yesterday, I finished the Wheel of Time TV show, so next week I will have videos coming out about that, don't worry. So I will be starting The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan and continuing on with the rest of the Wheel of Time series. Now my plan is to try and read one a month. Whether that happens will depend entirely on whether I get access to the books and whether I'm feeling like reading something this fucking chunky. So, but yeah, I mean, I'm on a bit of a Wheel of Time kind of high after that show. I really enjoyed the show. It was my first time kind of experiencing this world, and I decided to do it show then books because I don't often get a chance to do that, and I wanted to take the show at face value, and I'm quite glad I did, because I was able to enjoy it without just the scrutiny of, oh, that never happened in the books, or they've missed this bit out, or oh, they've changed that. So but it will be interesting then to go and read a couple of the books and then come back and compare my thoughts from just the show and then compare it to my thoughts once I've read the books. So I'm really, really excited to see how the material is dealt with in the actual book series and stuff, because I really enjoyed the TV show. I'm also taking part in the Dark Tower read-along. When I say taking part, I mean I've been basically playing catch-up since after the first book. This is a really long done by Steve Talks Books and stuff. I've been basically saying I'm going to catch up since I fell behind. I'm determined to catch up by the time the group discussion for Wolves of Calla happens on the 16th of January. I'm about halfway through Wizard and Glass, so you know, it's doable, it's doable. We'll see how we do, but at the same time, because I've had to read like 3 of these books in a row, I am feeling a bit bogged down with it a little bit, particularly in Wizard of Glass. I'm in the Susan portion of that book, and I kind of couldn't give less of a shit about Susan. You know, I'm here for Roland and Susanna and Eddie and Jack and Jake. I don't give a shit who Susan is. I'm definitely going to be reading those, so it's going to be Wolves of Calla in January, Song of Susanna in February, Dark Tower in March, and then Winning Through the Keyhole in April. I believe that's the books. I don't think I've missed any out. But I'm definitely going to keep up, and I do want to find out what happens with this book series. I am intrigued by it. I then want to finish off Blood Like Magic. I started reading it on audiobook back in October, and I just couldn't quite get into it and stuff just because of the audiobook format. I don't find that actually I want to listen to audiobooks a lot of the time, particularly full-length novels, because I read so quickly I almost feel like, oh well, I'll just get this done faster if I read it physically. I tend to, when I'm working, I tend to prefer to listen to music than to audiobooks. That is something I have found out this year. So I might find a physical copy of Blood Like Magic, or I might just try and finish it off in audiobook. I then received a copy of Assassin's Quest. This was part of the Wiser Book Exchange hosted on the Wizardly Duo Discord as a sort of like secret Santa where we could all send each other books according to our Amazon wish list. So this was sent to me with one other book that I'll get to in a minute by Nico from Nico's Book Reviews, so thank you very much for sending me that. I read Assassin's Apprentice last January, and then I read Royal Assassin back in like June, and I've been saying all year that I'm going to get to Assassin's Quest, so I finally have a copy thanks to Nico, and I'm going to read it sooner rather than later because I really loved Royal Assassin. You know, it made it onto my top 10, my top books of the year, and I really want to see how this trilogy closes out and what happens to all my favourite characters. And the other book that Nico got me was Stones of Light by Zach Argyle. This is just one I've been hearing loads of buzz about and things. I'm really just curious to see what it's going to be about and what my opinion of it's going to be. Another one I'll probably get to sooner rather than later. Some general just Brando Sando as well. Yeah, just some general Brandon Sanderson as well. I've been meaning to read Elantris and Warbreaker all year because I asked on the Wizardly Duo Discord if, you know, what I should read once I've read Mistborn Eras 1 and 2 and stuff, because obviously Cosmere is this huge big world and like there's actually good ways to read everything because then you can like get all the little Easter eggs. So people said I should probably read Elantris and then Warbreaker before going on to Stormlight Archive, which I do now have a copy of because my friend very kindly bought that for me for my Christmas. So yeah, so I'm going to be trying to get to those books this year. I also really want to get to Sword of Kaigen. This is one that I've just been hearing so much hype about that I want to read it just to find out what my opinion is going to be. It sounds fantastic, I'm really, really excited for it, and I'm hopefully going to get to it soon. I also really want to read the finale to the Furyborn series. This is, you know, I read Kingsbane last sort of March sort of time I think, and then I've been meaning to sort of get to the final book Lightbringer all year. you know, it's not one of my most favourite series ever, but I do enjoy it, and I'm very curious to see how everything wraps up. There's plenty of things that still keep me intrigued in this series, and whilst it's not my favourite trilogy, I do enjoy it. I do really like reading it. It's a very easy read, and I'm so curious just to see how it wraps everything up and how it deals with stuff that happened towards the end of the last book. You know, I am still very much intrigued by it. I definitely want to just round out this series and see how it ends. I was out at my dad's the other day, and I don't really live at my dad's anymore. I don't really spend all too much time there. You know, my parents are divorced, and a lot of my things are actually at my mum's because she's in the city and it's just more accessible. And then also, obviously, I live down at my flat that I live in university time, and I do consider that is actually where I live. You know, I have moved out from home, at least I feel. I just kind of keep my books here, to be honest. And but yeah. So while I was out there, because I'm not out there much and I won't be out there for a wee while, I don't think, I thought I'd liberate some of my books that I want to read or reread. I had a few books there that I haven't actually read before that I got back when I used to get Fairy Loot boxes, and my legs are going to sleep. There's a lot of books out there that I just haven't read before or I want to reread and just see if my opinions change. First one on that being Strange the Dreamer. This is one that I read back when it came out, and obviously I've got this lovely hardcover with sprayed edges from the Fairy Loot box that I got of it. You know, it's got all this lovely stuff in the front and things, like, you know, I'm very lucky to have this copy. But when I first read it, I wasn't too impressed. You know, I really love the Dr. Smoke and Bone trilogy, and this really didn't live up to my expectations from that. But I've heard Elsa from The French Book Dreamer and Walker from Walker Writes 7 absolutely raving about this duology. So I thought, you know, we read quite similar books, and Elsa's basically told me I need to reread it. So who am I to argue with her? So I'm going to reread it, see if my opinion changes, and yeah, just see what happens there. I then found a copy of Beyond the Darkened Shore. This was a book that was included in Fairy Loot a couple of years ago, and I've never read it. I completely forgot it was there. I have no idea what it's about, but I'm very curious to find out. There's also a copy of The Last Namsara, another Fairy Loot book that I did read back in the day, and I did really enjoy it, and I was going to read the sequel, but then by the time I think it came out, I'd completely forgotten what happened in this one. So I thought, okay, I'll reread it, see if it holds up, and see if I do still want to continue to the sequel, because yeah, I do remember really enjoying this one. And then I also found The State of Sorrow, which was one that I had started reading and I couldn't quite get into. So it's one that I just kind of want to go back to, see if I can finish it and see what my opinion is going to be. And lastly, I found my copy of The Lies of Loch Glamora, which I started reading a few years ago, and you can see how far away from the end I DNF'd this. So I kind of, and I've been hearing loads of people raving about it as well, like Grace from Grace Dion, great channel if you haven't checked her out, by the way. All the channels I mentioned, by the way, are all fantastic and you should definitely go check them all out. But yeah, I keep hearing lots of really good things about it, and I kind of want to just go back to it and try it again. Now that I read a lot more adult fantasy, you know, I think I read this when I was still just transitioning between just reading YA to reading a more broad mix of fantasy genres sort of thing. So I want to go back and see if I can actually reread the whole thing and see if I can make it to the end this time. I then also found all my copies of The Lord of the Rings, which I have never read. I started trying to read The Fellowship like 3 or 4 times, and like a lot of people I just couldn't get into it, but I think again, now that I'm older and now that I'm more used to prose heavy, description heavy books, I do want to give it another go and see if I can make it through this series. The films are some of my favourite things ever, and I definitely just want to just see if I can get into the books, because, no lie, I'm kind of curious in reading the Silmarillion, which my friend keeps raving about, and I feel I need to read these before I go anywhere near that. Flamefall by Rosaria Mundull. I read Fireboard earlier this year, absolutely loved it, desperately want to read the sequel. Enough said. I also had a copy of Rivers of London by Ben Aranovich on my shelves for a few months. I really want to get to that, because as I said, I've had it for ages, and I just need to get to it. I also really want to get to the Master of Jinn novellas by P. Jelly Clark. I've already read Dead Jinn in Cairo, and I have a spoiler-free review for that one. And I now have a copy of Master of Jinn, which is the first full novel in this sort of series, but I do want to read the novellas before I get there, just because obviously that's the way they were published and stuff, so I do want to see why the novellas are there and see what world building and stuff they have and how that will then perhaps lead into the Master of Jinn. Bloodsong as well, I bought a couple of copies of Dom from Domination Books when he was on hauling them, so I've got Bloodsong and I've got Tower Lord. And I've been hearing nothing but good things from loads of different channels about this series, so I definitely want to try and get to that as soon as possible. One of my favourite books from last year was Elatsue by Darcy Little Badger, and I've recently discovered that she has another book out called A Snake Falls to Earth. Definitely going to be looking into that. I absolutely loved Elatsue. It was so refreshing and interesting and just such a good book. so I really, really want to see what else this author has to offer. And I also want to get to Empress of Flames by Mimi Yu. This is the sequel to The Girl King, which was something that I just found in a charity shop a couple of years ago, and I really enjoyed it. It was such a surprise as well, you know, I wasn't expecting to love it as much as I did, and I really want to see what happens with those characters and how they progress into this sequel and stuff. You know, the ending of that first book was really interesting, the characters were in really interesting places. Cannot wait to see how that continues in this sequel. And last but not least, I did a book haul the other day because I was working in a bookshop and I got a hefty discount, so obviously I've used that. So I have a huge stack of books, so definitely go check out that book haul to get a better sense as to what my TBR is going to look like for the rest of the year, because if you know me, you know if I've bought a bunch of books, I'm not really one of those people that buys them and never reads them. I will try then to read my way through them before I go and buy more books. So I'll just do a quick list though here. If you want to go see my more in-depth thoughts, like I said, do go check out that book haul, but just in case you don't want to, you just want the titles. In that video I mentioned She Who Became the Sun, The Forevers, Skin of the Sea, Of Women and Salt, The Girl in the Tower, Ninth Reign, Library of the Dead, Master of Gin, The Coven, Nobleman's Guide to Scandal and Shipwrecks, A Clockwork River, The Lost Storyteller, The Winter Garden, Certain Dark Things, Lionheart Girl, Six Crimson Cranes, and the Dark Crystal Creation Myths comic. And that is my vague TBR and anticipated releases for 2022. Have you read any of these books? What do you think? Let me know your spoiler-free comments back down below. Tell me which ones you think I should get to sooner rather than later. What are your anticipated releases for 2022? What are some books you're looking to read in the next year? Let me know. I'd love to hear what you're going to be reading in the next year. Thanks so much for watching. I will see you next time. Oh my god. Fucking dying in here. I'm really crammed in here as well. It's not very fun.